Hello and welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan, and on this show, my guests and I unpack the stories that shape us and the lives that we lead on our path to self-mastery. So, let's not wait any longer. Let the games begin. Hey, Corey, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
What's up, Nick? Super excited to be here.
Man, I'm super excited that you're here. I was telling you this morning, so I do meditations every single morning and as night, as often as I can. It's part of my routine. But there are moments in the mornings where I have 3 to 5 minutes with you at different times and then tell me to go have a kick-ass day. And that's how our friendship here started. I found out about the Insight Timer app and then found some dude who told me to have a kick-ass day in the beginning of a morning meditation. I was like, this is great. And then I found out that we were connected, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon style in a sense, with somebody on LinkedIn who also has another podcast, the 1% podcast. Think differently, my friends. And man, I'm just really happy that you're on the show. So without nerding out, thank you for being here.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here. I'm excited for our conversation.
Cool. So why don't you get us started? Give us a little bit of context. Who is Corey Quinn? What do you do? And tell us one thing that most people don't know about you that's a little odd or bizarre.
Okay. So Corey Quinn, I am a consultant. I work with B2B subscription-based businesses doing north of $3 million. I work really closely with the founders and marketing team to help them get unstuck. That's my job. And so something that is different and a little unique about me, I was a childhood actor and I starred on the very first Chicken McNuggets commercial that ever aired. And the funny thing is, so I was this little kid, I was like 7 years old, and I had a chance for the very first time to show my son, who's now 7 years old, a clip of me on television. It was obviously on YouTube now. And I was super excited because I was like, I'm going to finally show this to him. And like, he's going to get such a kick out of this. And so I played the commercial and he couldn't care less. Like, oh yeah, whatever. Yeah. So kind of anticlimactic there. But yeah, I was a childhood actor. I did about 3 years. I did a Igloo Ice Chest commercial with Joe Theismann. I did a couple of Hot Wheels, McDonald's, as you do here in Los Angeles. It's what we do.
Yeah, the East Coasters, we don't typically get into commercials unless we were, running past the street and they're like, how the fuck that guy getting here? So give me a little bit of background to that. How did you get into that? Did you have family that was into that sort of thing? Or were they just like, you're a cute kid, let's get you chicken nuggets?
Yeah, no, I was a cute kid. I think we were at Saks Fifth Avenue as a child. My mom and I were together and we were going to a wedding. So I had to get a suit and I was in the sort of the formal wear area in the shopping center, and there's some scout that came up to my mom and said, "You got a pretty cute kid there. He'd be great in commercials. Here's my card." And then, one thing led to the next, and next thing I know, I'm eating chicken McNuggets with a huge camera in my face.
What a weird thing. That's so cool though. I feel like that would be a weird situation now. Like if somebody walks up and was like, "You have a cute kid. Here's my card." They'd be like 911.
Yeah, no, it would be a little alarming and just, get me the hell out of here.
Man, so you were an actor for a little bit. Did you do anything past those commercials, or did you want to even?
No, I loved it. It was super unique. I didn't have any friends doing it, and it was at a time in my life when my friends were super important. I wanted to spend time with them. I didn't fully enjoy. It was fine. It was cool. It was different. And I did it, like I said, for a couple of years. And then I eventually decided, hey, this is not really that fun. So I decided to kind of hang it up. And then, my parents didn't have a problem with it. They were happy as long as I was happy. So
That's cool. So let's jump a little bit ahead. So now that you're working business to business and working with other marketing people, how did you get into that? Like what was the path that led you from eating chicken McNuggets to working with CEOs and CMOs?
Yeah. So quick background on me. My previous role was as the chief marketing officer at a company called Scorpion. And Scorpion is a B2B, basically a marketing agency, very technology heavy agency serving the SMBs. I joined the company about 7 years ago, and I was with them for a full, basically 6 years as their chief marketing officer. We grew the company super fast. We started off at about $20 million in annual revenue, grew it to be about $150 million in about 6 years. Massive, massive growth. I learned a lot. And throughout the years, I always wanted to get back to more of an entrepreneurial motion in my career. And so my time at Scorpion was amazing, and it felt at a certain point it was time for me to move on. And what I really wanted to do was to step out and be, I guess what they call today, a solopreneur, and start helping other companies by leveraging the experience that I had at Scorpion, and then previous in my career, all the sort of B2B sales and marketing experience, which led me to today. And so I left Scorpion at the end of last year, and it was a great decision for me personally. And I've stepped into this consulting role, landed 2 clients really quickly, and then a third one. And then now I'm just focused on helping these 3 companies grow. And it's been great.
That's awesome, man. I know growing a business can be a lot. It can be taxing on you personally, spiritually, physically, all of that. But to have a crazy amount of growth over a 6-year period, how did you manage your emotions? How did you manage your mindset? And how did you manage just being you without being kind of a workaholic?
Sure. Thank you. Well, I probably could not say that I was not a workaholic, but a lot of imbalance, I think, for a couple of years, and that was part of it. Honestly, to be completely transparent, it was a challenging role in a very, very fast growing company in a culture. So every company has its own culture, and this company has such a fun, exciting, sort of client first, committed kind of culture where you really feel a part of the family and all these things. And so I was really consumed by that I think in a positive way. In some respects, I potentially prioritize work over other aspects of my life, and to a certain point when I wanted to make some changes. But I would say that it was a period of a lot of stress, good stress, but also what helped to sort of balance it out was a lot of positive impact. We were growing the company, we were making great strides, and so the work was really resulting in some nice sort of material benefits.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know if you're working and grinding on something and building, but you don't see anything really coming out of it, you can just feel like you're not doing anything or that you're moving backwards. So for you to see that growth must have been great, but here you are years later. I mean, a little over a year or whatever, post being out of the company, but being able to look back, are there things that you would have done differently for yourself or mentally to be able to get through that stuff a little differently?
Yes and no. It's hard to say because it was a culture of sort of overwork at the time when I was at the company. And so you kind of either are on the bus or you're not. And so it's kind of part of the sort of the social contract of being all in and being a part of that. And so I'll give you an example. So the executive team there, a bunch of founders, or the founder and a lot of his sort of close friends are heavily involved in the business. And there is sort of a culture, at least when I joined the company, of going out and having a great time, going out and getting drinks. It was, I think, every Tuesday and Thursday night. It wasn't just a cocktail and go home. It was let's have some fun, type of thing. And I've always lived sort of very conscious of my health. Maybe not always, but my adult life for sure, I've been very conscious of my health, and that was not something I really wanted to do. Drink a lot of alcohol. I'd always be hungover the next day. And the location of the office was about an hour from my house. And so it was not very practical with a wife and son at home to go out every Tuesday and Thursday night. However, as a result of not doing that, I may have missed opportunities for bonding with my team or the executive team, the founder and others. And it was sort of a trade-off. And I remember actually asking my coach, how do I build a better relationship with the founder and some of the other senior executives that were basically my team? without doing this? And his answer was pretty straightforward, which is, well, you just have to suck it up and go out and have a good time with them, and not not think about it too much. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, I could do that, but then I would be compromising my values a little bit, and I decided to ultimately not do that. So I think potentially missed out on some trust building and some culture building at the company.
Sure. I'm sure there's still a lot of companies that are like that. We were talking before we hit record about how remote work has kind of changed a lot of things for people, especially working from home. Some people are more of a holic now because they don't have to drive. You're just like constantly here. And I find myself doing that shit where I'm like, oh, I'll go make dinner. 5 minutes later, I'm back at the computer. I'm like, how did I get here? But being in that spot where there are companies that almost make you feel like you have to do these things to be part of the crew. And I think some of that really stems from some of the fear that they have as owners. And I've experienced that with different companies I've been part of, but also through conversations with people where they're like, well, I feel this way and I can't do anything different. And they're obligated to either go spend that time or put in the extra work. Now, how do you talk to CMOs about that now, knowing the shit that you went through and honestly knowing that's not really fucking healthy at all?
Right. Exactly. I think what you're mentioning about remote work, I think people are being hired away from the headquarters where a lot of these things typically happen. It's especially at the senior level. So if the CEO is in Florida and the CMO is in the Bay Area, there's less pressure to go and kind of have a sort of always be on and always be sort of in that mode. If you're not particularly, that's not particularly your thing. By the way, I'm an introvert, so I'm not the guy who likes to go out drinking all night for, a couple nights a week. That's just kind of not something I'm very interested in, not only from a health perspective, but I think when it does come up, I think there's a certain aspect of it. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you have to show up and you have to, put the company hat on and do the things that will help you to build tighter relationships, because that's ultimately what's going to serve you in your career. But as long as you're not compromising your values in such a way that is, harming your health, harming your relationships, putting yourself in harm, I think that there's some gray area there as far as what you should do. And it's really, ultimately it's up to the person, but there's a certain level of needing to participate in those things.
Yeah, there's a balance. I get that. Like, you don't want to always be that guy like, no, I'm not going to do anything. I don't really like you people. I'm going to go home. Like, you got me from 9 to 4:59 and that's it.
And look, I think, and just sorry to interject, but I think there's different stages of businesses as well. And so this happened to be a earlier stage business in a massive growth cycle that required a lot of collaboration, a lot of trust, a lot of activity. And so for someone to sort of not be of the mind of, company first and, we're on this crazy ride together and we're going to do whatever it takes to see where it goes, that mentality, I don't think you'd fit in. At least at this company, you certainly wouldn't fit in, and you probably wouldn't last long. So there's a sort of requirement. Now you contrast that with, if you go and work for Uber or you go work for Facebook, it's a much different business. It's an enterprise level business, and there's actually a lot more infrastructure. There's a lot more oversight from a human resources perspective. And so there's not that expectation. In fact, it's probably the opposite, where it's like you have to ask for overtime type of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the people that you're working with now, did you find that you gravitated toward maybe a little bit more of a mom and pop, or maybe something more corporate, or something completely different than what you had?
What I was very intentional when I left Scorpion, I knew I wanted to consult with businesses, but I had to figure out what at what level, like what type of business. And what I was immediately attracted to is working with founders. And the reason for that is I've been a founder myself. I started up a business out of college. We raised $6 million and we grew the business. It was a great experience. So I've been a founder. I've worked for the founder of a business multiple times. The last company I worked for, Scorpion, I worked directly for the founder. And so I also have an affinity for people who like to break the rules and like to do big things and like want to really build something interesting. And so I like that energy, and I'm attracted to that type of motion. And so as a result of that, I decided I wanted to work with founders. Now, I don't work with pure startups. And the reason why is because I find that my strengths come in helping a business that has a level of success find focus out of chaos. Anytime you do a startup business, there's a lot of work that's done in a lot of different directions. You say yes to a ton of different clients. And so at a certain point, doing that is counterproductive. And so my role, as I see it, is helping companies to get focused once they've already gotten a level of traction in the business.
Interesting. Honestly, man, the thing that came to mind is those people that help people organize their closets. And I've had conversations with those people, and they're like, you never really think about it until you go in and you look for the damn thing. And same with business. You can transfer that over where you go, you got a lot of shit in this closet. We got to take this out. We got to work through it. Because looking at it, you're like, I don't know what to do. We just keep doing these things over and over. Now, do you find that you get into a lot of almost therapy or mental work with the people that you're working through because they're just ingrained in the shit that they've been doing?
I'll give you an example. So yes, and the example I have is one of my clients is a software business. They have an amazing product in the sort of the learning development space, and they are about 6 years old. They do about $3 million in revenue, and as I've gotten to know the company and the product, is by far is a superior product in the market, for sure. Just as far as features and functionality and the value that it creates relative to its competitive set. And the business, as I mentioned, is doing about $3 million. It should be doing $30 million. And the reason why they've limited themselves is because when I got in there, we looked at the business, they're in 29 different verticals, meaning that they said yes to everybody. Everyone from sports management to hospitality, restaurants, travel, you name it. Like they're in every business. And the challenge for that he found himself in, the CEO and founder, is that he was as a small $3 million business, he's unable to compete against the super large businesses that are much more established and can market more broadly and to attract a larger audience. And as a result of that broad approach, his message kind of really fell flat in the market. And so what we did is we identified, of the 29 different verticals, which one was the best fit for him and for the business from both a revenue or retention perspective, as well as qualitative, like which companies do they like working with, which ones are a good fit for the product, which ones map to the future product roadmap, and so on and so forth. So we identified restaurants as that vertical. That's the vertical. And so what we're doing now is we're building business around a go-to-market plan around focusing only on dominating in restaurants, putting 100% of the effort behind that versus, diffusing the effort across these 29 different verticals.
So how did he feel about the unraveling when he was like, but I did all this work and I got us into all these things? You're like, that's cool. Let's get it to one.
Yeah. Well, I think he was ready. And that's really the best client for me, is someone who's like, I've tried it. I can't figure it out. I know I need to simplify. I don't know how. And to your earlier question, it's like anything else, it's behavior, right? So it's getting out of the habit of saying yes to everything and saying no to certain things. And frankly, he's still saying yes to a lot of things that he shouldn't be. But my role is to help him to stay focused, like to build that plan, is help him stay focused and invested in this plan. And once, as we continue to see results, I expect his behavior to change, just like any other human behavior, which is that when you see results and they're the results that you want, that you've been struggling to get, you tend to want to do more of that stuff. So it's all work in progress.
Yeah, just like when you see it working, you're like, oh, so I shouldn't do those stupid things anymore? No. Okay, great. I'll go do more of that.
Or hopefully he's so busy he doesn't have time for the other stuff.
Yeah, there you go. So what sort of advice would you give to that founder that's in a spot like that right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say either you are sort of self-aware or you're not, as it relates to this specific issue. And what I mean by that is either you're still in the mode of saying yes to everything and you're convinced that by just saying yes to one more deal, to one more vertical, more revenue, that you're going to somehow make it big or somehow scale and so on and so forth. And that's really not the client for me. It's really the person I want to speak to is the person who has done that, has been through that, and has realized that no matter what you do, no matter what vendor you partner with, no matter what agency you have, no matter what sales team you hire or sales leader, that is not the thing that's going to change it. It's going to be through focus. And so What I would say is, in general, as a discipline, it is better to focus on a singular vertical, a single buyer today, and building your business around that. And then once you've mastered that niche around that buyer, then you can go on to the next one. So it's more of a sequential approach to growth versus sort of a concurrent.
Yeah. Or as some would just like it to be a shotgun, where they're like, we want everybody come on in. We want to sell you things.
Right. And that's fine. But I can't help you if that's your mindset where it's like, I want everything and my product's perfect for everybody. Everybody can use it and everybody's a perfect fit. They're not ready yet.
Yeah. Yeah. They got stuff they got to go through to figure that out. And you'd mentioned about mindset. So I want to know how you got to the point where you got onto the Insight Timer app and got into meditation and all of that. I know you'd said that you don't typically kind of tie the two together, but it does sound like within conversations, and you being you're going to kind of bring that sort of stuff up and have those sort of things happen. But how did you get into that side of more the spiritual and more the meditation and personal growth?
So I would say I was really introduced to personal development by my mother, of all people. Thank goodness for her. Early on, my parents did split and get divorced, and I was lucky enough for my parents to have the insight to put me into therapy. And as a result of that, I really benefited from therapy as an only child. Two parents who were working professionals involved in their personal lives a lot, and so I was I grew up quickly and independently, and so I got exposed to therapy, and then eventually in college, I was interested in this technology called neuro-linguistic programming, which is about the mind, how the mind works, and studied neuro-linguistic programming, became did a practitioner course, did a master practitioner course, got very involved in that world, which has a lot to do with the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, and it sounds like you may be familiar, but it's the modalities around the things we say to ourselves and the pictures we tell we show ourselves and the feelings we feel. And so I learned a lot about the science of how the brain and the mind works, and some tools to help change sort of limiting beliefs and whatnot. And so I was super, super interested in all that in college. At the same time, I also was certified as a hypnotherapist. So I went deep on this stuff. So I learned a lot about induction and learned about Milton Erickson and all these folks who are the masters of hypnotherapy, and learned about sleight of mouth and all these really, really cool things. And so I've always had a sort of interest in the mind, the conscious and the subconscious mind. And that kind of played in nicely to my career in sales and marketing, because sales and marketing is really about influence. And it all starts with the mind and the stories that we tell ourselves. So yeah, it really kind of started early on.
That's huge. I mean, most people don't say that their mom got them into it. It's somebody else, because it's typically not from home. But I can almost guarantee that a lot of the people that are more into these things, if they didn't have that complete opposite background, where they're like, I was in such a terrible spot that I did a complete 180 and here I am. I can almost guarantee that there's a lot more of that happens with parents that are just trying to be better people and trying to give wisdom, because there's things that I'm sure you've learned over the course of time, especially NLP wise. It's how you talk to yourself, where they, as parents, say, don't say that to yourself. You're not an idiot. You just didn't do the right thing that time. So let's help you and do something a little different. So with your kid now, are you introducing him to Tony Robbins or anything like that?
I do meditate with him. He lasts maybe 30 seconds.
Then he's just twitching. He's like, that's it, Dad, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm out of here. I got to go. And so, so I do that. I'm very intentional about modeling good behavior in front of him. So I meditate in front of him. I don't have an expectation that he's going to do it, but at least he sees me doing it. I also work out in the same, try to like do push-ups around him, those type of things, to give him an opportunity to see what I do. Without a lot of overt expectation on him just yet. He's not quite there yet. He's 7. So
yeah, but that's a big thing for him to be able to see what you're doing, and for you not to pressure him without being like, I'm sitting here, you should sit here too. I think that can push people away. Like, think about how many people sort of been a joke. Like, yeah, I played an instrument. I played piano because my parents forced me to do it or something. And then people are just like pushed away.
Right. And I haven't touched it in 30 years.
Exactly. And you're like, oh my God, you could be a savant. You don't know. Like your parents knew, but you didn't.
And I think I learned that from my parents. My parents both work very, very hard. They still do to this day. And so my parents are both physically fit and they both work out. They do a lot of sort of physical activity. And so they never really pushed that on me. I saw that of them. And I think maybe I was influenced by that. So I'm modeling the modeling they did for me for my own son.
Yeah. Way to go, parents. Good job with that one. And for you to be able to look and be like, oh, cool. Yeah, this is how this works. Instead of like force feeding what somebody taught you and what somebody taught them sort of thing. I know we've gotten into some deeper things, bits and pieces here, but let's talk about a couple of those major moments or, episodes that have happened in the course of time that you can look back to and say, man, that was a moment that changed me.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Tony Robbins. I was in high school, and it was a time in my life where I was hanging with the wrong crew, doing some very not healthy things around some habits and just not being very active. And sort of the one time in my life I was not very physically active and got involved in some guys who were not very healthy. And it led to me falling into a depression. And my parents had divorced and separated. I was living in an apartment with my mom. And, all in all, life was fine. But I think as a child in high school trying to figure out life, I fell into a depression. And luckily, my mom had I'm trying to think of the name of the Tony Robbins program, but it was like the Awaken the Giant Within or one of these things. And I got to a point where I was so just hopeless and helpless in life, and really was not in a good spot mentally, and I didn't really feel like I had a lot of options. I didn't know where I was going, and then luckily I decided to listen to this tape. It was a cassette tape back in the day, and I don't know if you've ever been through Tony Robbins programs. So he's just an amazing, amazing speaker. And this has been the time, I think this is when I actually got introduced to NLP through Tony. And in any event, I took this program and I mentioned I remember there was this breakthrough moment in the program, and it was like, you're going to be the guy you want to be, and you're going to do the things you want to do, and you're going to take control of your life. And I remember this, like, you remember it now, just like this massive transformation where it was like, finally promising myself to be true to myself and be the person that I truly know who I am. And I had that sort of emotional breakthrough, and that led to me cleaning up my diet, cleaning up my physical routine, having a fresh look on life. And I remember I went from D's in classes to straight A's. And I remember the following semester, I met at the time, the woman of my dreams. And this woman, 1 year older than me in high school, but to me, she was amazing. And she was way out of my league. Somehow I was able to build a connection with her. We ended up becoming sort of, boyfriend, girlfriend, really super connected and really spiritually connected for many years. And so just all this wonderful transformations happened in my life when I decided in that moment in high school that I wanted to, how do I say it? It's so funny. I've never really put words to this, so forgive me for not being more articulate, but, so I was ready and willing to bet on myself when I never had. And when I did that, everything changed.
That's interesting, man. It can be easy to say, I wish I'd done this at this time or what have you. I didn't experience anything like Tony Robbins until maybe 19, 20, something like that. And I think if I were to listen to some of that throughout high school, maybe things would have been a little different, but probably not, because I probably wasn't friggin' ready until, you get to that point where you're ready. But there are a lot of kids that I remember putting pressure on themselves. Like they need to figure out what their 5-year, their 10-year, their 15-year plan or whatever as a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid. And them going to college and then becoming a doctor or whatever. Like they had these big glamorous plans. And then there are other people that are like, I don't even give a fuck. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be around anybody. I want to go do my own thing and just disappear. I think that all basically stems from the same thing of not being okay in your skin and being able to actually grow from that. So for you to experience that and look back at that now and even kind of articulate that, do you see how you do things now, deep work wise, that are still of the same mindset, or are there things that you do on the daily that you wouldn't be the same without?
I think at that moment when I went through that transformation, thank you, Tony Robbins, for that. I got connected to what I call the voice. And for me, the voice is intuition. It's sort of the higher power within me that is more universal. It goes beyond, it's sort of my subconscious. It's something that guides me. And I think ever since that moment, I've allowed myself to be guided by the voice. Sometimes I don't always follow the voice, but when I do follow the voice, I experience amazing moments in life. And so I can give you an example where the company before Scorpion, I was looking to transition out of, and I had an offer from Scorpion to become their CMO. And this is back in 2015. And I had another offer from another company at the same time. And so I was kind of doing these competing offers. And actually the other offer it sounded like on paper, it sounded better. It sounded like a better bet, a safer bet. At the time, Scorpion was basically building websites and doing SEO and some things that I felt like back in 2015, like, God, that's kind of commoditized. There's not much opportunity left in that market. Logically, that's what logic said. And this other company was in this massive growth vertical, and it was super interesting. I liked the CEO. And I remember I was in Santa Monica with my wife. We were at Mexican dinner and having some margaritas, and I was sharing with her sort of my conflicted sort of mindsets. Like, on paper, this one sounds great, but I really want to go to this other one that doesn't sound as good. I remember that night because my wife got mad at me because I basically told her my decision, which was that I'm going to go with the one that's less attractive on paper. She didn't understand why I would do that. We had a young child at home and whatnot. And so she's like, why would you do that? Like, you're going against the obvious choice. And so obviously it worked out for me choosing Scorpion. The other company, interestingly, went out of business about 2 years after that. And so just another example of following the voice. And I make it a practice on a daily basis to reconnect with the voice, listen to the voice, and see, what I need to do to make, more changes in my life.
I like that. I like the idea of listening to that voice, but I got to be honest, because one of the things that I like to do on the show is play the devil's advocate of that one person, or maybe there's a couple of them that are like, yeah, fuck you guys. I hear what you're saying, but I've tried that. That's bullshit, or I can't, or what have you. And I think that there are certain people that have a hard time discerning what is their intuition and what's just the monkey mind. So how would you kind of coach somebody through that, or what tips would you give them to listen through the bullshit of the monkey mind and get to the actual intuition?
I think you got to go through the monkey mind. It's a great way to say it. I think there's a process where you have to allow yourself to be emotional and to let your ego sort of play out. And you could do that in a number of ways. You could go to the beach where no one else is around. You could just yell and scream, get some emotion out. You could journal, you could meditate, you can go deep within. But yeah, there's a certain level of bullshit that we all kind of carry around and that sort of disguises the truth. The other thing I think is important to do is to, on a regular basis, I do it on a quarterly basis, I do I look at inventory of where I'm at today. And that is in my body. Like, what are the facts of today? What are the facts? And these are facts that, like, my height, my weight, my health, my resting heart rate, how often I work out, and so on and so forth. Like, what is the truth of today? And you can't hide from the facts, right? You can't tell stories about the facts of the facts of the facts, right? And so you start with the facts, and then based on that, that will lead you into a deeper conversation with yourself. It's so easy, however, for people to avoid the facts because sometimes the facts reveal things that you don't want to see, but and that's true for everyone, myself included. But I've sort of built a discipline around making sure that for the areas that are important for my life, my health, my relationships, my business, that I'm attached to the facts. And anytime that I drift from the facts, that's when I start to fall in trouble.
That's good stuff, man. Especially to be able to go, all right, well, facts aren't going to lie. So as long as you get those out and start from that, then your emotions are automatically going to come up, because you'll be like, oh, there's this. Oh, well, you feel this way about it. But it still is what it is. But at least you can't remove those facts. I really appreciate that. I think for the audience, I'm sure there are some people that try to journal. They try to go through things and talk about stuff, but they just get kind of lost in it. And then they get too upset. And I'm sure we've all been there. Like you just mentioned, even kind of going through that monkey brain. I think of like a jungle in a sense. Now, did you ever see the book, or not the book, the movie Big Fish? I think it came from a book. Did you ever see that movie, Big Fish? With Ewan McGregor and the guy. So it was a sci-fi sort of thing, but it's a big story. And at one point he's going through this forest and just pops out into this extra little town that was hidden behind the forest. So I think of that sort of stuff within our mind. We're like, there's that thing that's back there, almost that oasis, but you got to get through the bullshit of being able to do it. And I know for me personally, I've had a hard time over the course of time to be able to not listen to the other bullshit negative talk, but be able to get to the intuition. Now, have you experienced this too, where the intuition doesn't speak in bullshit long sentences? It gives you jabbed specific words like this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, I'm a feeling tone guy, so I let sort of a feeling first, and then that bubbles up into words or images for me, and so I let that feeling is the guide for me. Yeah,
the trigger, that's got to be able to open you up. I'm right there with you. I think creatives are like that, where we just feel things at first, and if we feel a little off, like you should listen to it. That the biome, the microbes or whatever else in your system is like, hey, there's something wrong. You should do something with this. So how did you get to Insight Timer and doing meditations and things of that? Did you do it for yourself? Was that kind of like just set it up for you and then put it out there?
The voice told me to do it.
Thank you, voice.
I was called to do that, and it was something that I did as kind of an experiment. So I did, I think 12 different meditations, and I challenged myself to do it within a 3-month period. And so I did it, and I'd heard about Insight Timer and that you could publish. So I was like, okay, I'm getting into meditation. I'm getting a lot of value out of it. I want to teach this. I want to find a way to teach it. There's this thing called Insight Timer. I can publish a couple of meditations, and who knows what might happen, just do it. And it's kind of more of just like, this is kind of scary for me to do. I think I know what I'm doing, but I'm called to do it. So I did it. And what I did was I recorded the 12 meditations, and then I uploaded it to Insight Timer. And the cool thing is that people around the world are downloading and listening to these meditations. I get reviews just like any other product, and it's wonderful. It's so wonderful, Nick, to see people around the world, like literally from, you name it, all walks of life, all places around the world, islands and big countries and everything, experiencing value from that meditation. So it's so gratifying to look at that.
I bet. And for you to listen to the voice and go ahead and do it, even though it was scary or uncomfortable and awkward and weird, and you're like, this is not something I'm normally doing. Do you find that you have more of that you're being called to put out there, or was that kind of a one-time thing and now you've shifted a bit?
So I would love to do more of it. I think from a very practical perspective, I am committing myself to pouring all my time into building my business. And so, at a certain point, there's a small window of time where I thought, well, maybe I can make that a business and kind of be like a Headspace kind of thing, where I come up with an app and do sort of meditations for business people. But that is at this point more of a hobby than a career. And from a very practical perspective, I've got a wife and kids. I'm not yet financially independent, and so I needed to build up the business first. And so, to be honest, being completely transparent, I'm not sure how to integrate that with my other aspects of my business and my life. I think I came up at a time when meditation was not a commonly discussed topic, whereas I think it's much more today. And so I know it adds value. I know people love it, love the meditation in general, but also get value out of my meditations. And I'm sort of open to the universe to figure out what's the next step.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I can tell that even from when we were talking before we hit record, that you're like, I can't fully see it. And sometimes that's okay to not be able to fully see. But if you have that feel and you trust the voice to kind of lead you in that direction, and it sounds like you are, where you're not being led in that direction. I think that's kind of a lesson for all of us of go where you're feeling you should go and give your all to that thing, especially building your business. Now, yeah, there are those things like your wife, child, mortgage, car payments, food and shit. Yeah, there's stuff that you need to take care of. But if you're feeling the thing that you're doing, then that's huge, man. Now, you had mentioned earlier even about sales and marketing. If you don't have some of that, you're just kind of a grunt sales guy, just trying to push shit. But if you're not able to actually talk to people and have good conversation and get stuff out of them, I think a lot of that's really psychology, don't you?
Oh, 100%. I mean, sales and marketing are both, in my mind, influence. And the way you build influence is by building trust. And that has everything to do with psychology, communication, rapport, as they call it in neuro-linguistic programming. And so it's a great field for me, sort of professional field for me to leverage all of my interests and my hobbies to the extent of leveraging sort of sales and marketing as a way to add value to companies.
Now, when you think about yourself doing deep work, are there things that you're working on right now that like, hey, this is the focus, this is the thing that I'm actively working on?
Yeah. Well, I've got 3 clients. 2 of them are very, very active. One of them is more passive. So I'm dedicated to doing everything I can to earn an amazing testimonial from them, which means my mindset is they should be paying me 10% of the value that I create. So if they're paying me $100,000, I should be creating $1 million worth of value. So I'm trying to create $2 million worth of value so I can really knock it out of the park for them. So that's one. But then for myself, I'm on a mission to build ultimately a software business. That's where I'm going with this consulting. Doesn't make sense when I say that, but where I'm going is in the next 3 to 5 years, I want to have a significant software business, not a big, but revenue wise significant. And how I'm going to get there is right now I'm working with businesses that I believe I'm particularly well suited to serve. And I'm kind of doing paid market research where I'm learning about the problems, being able to apply my experience, and then hopefully find some patterns in the problems that I'm solving. And then I'll codify that, maybe create some products, and then eventually some software. But that's ultimately where I'm going. That's the big sort of impossible goal that I have for myself. And that gets me kind of going every day to keep going. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Are you doing that because you want to be able to build it, or is that more of a legacy thing that you're trying to set up?
I think both. I think one of the reasons why I'm not stepping back into a corporate role after my last company at Scorpion, which I could very easily do based on my background. I've got a lot of opportunities. I've decided intentionally not to because I extremely value my time and I see software as a great leverage of value. So very simply, when you're a consultant, when I'm a consultant, I'm selling effectively my time, but when I'm selling software, I'm selling an asset over and over and over again. And so there's a lot more leverage in that, and that's going to help me to buy back some time so I can spend more time with my wife and my kids and sort of enjoy life doing things other than work.
Yeah. Yeah. And working how you want to work. I think there are a lot of people that get stuck where they're like, I fucking hate my job, or I hate this, I hate that. It's like, well, stop. Go do something else. The fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah. The other aspect of that, and this is personal to me, but if I go work for a company, I'm working for an entrepreneur. It's their vision that I'm supporting and not my own. And that's fine. And I did that for many years. But the voice was always telling me that I don't need to live within the safety of someone else's vision. I have my own vision, and I just need to invest in it. And that's where I'm at.
You got to listen to that voice, man. It's a big thing. So I always like to ask, what's that one piece of advice you'd give somebody that's on their path towards self-mastery? It sounds like the voice may be the thing, but if you've got something else, please do.
It is the voice. It is definitely the voice. And the reason why I say that is because I believe that we can all tap into a higher power or a higher set of knowledge, and that the biggest thing that gets in the way is ego. There's a book by Ryan Holiday, The Ego is the Enemy, and these things. What that means to me is that we do a great job of blocking ourselves from hearing the voice. And I believe that it's the work involved in quieting the mind and getting to hear the voice, whether that's through meditation or working out or whatever that is. I think that work is extremely important because ultimately, I believe in life, that is the most intimate relationship you can have, is one with the voice. And so it's an important relationship to build and to invest in over time, and it will always pay you back in dividends.
That's great stuff. So Corey, where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a profile on Insight Timer. If you are a business person and you are looking to level up your mindset for the day, I've got a power mornings meditation, which I think, Nick, that you've been through a couple of times, which I love that meditation. I listen to it all the time. And others, definitely check that out on Insight Timer. You could also, if you're interested in accessing some of my marketing mind and ideas around subscription businesses, I have a newsletter that you can join. It's a daily newsletter. I send an email every single day, 5 days a week. And again, the topic is for B2B subscription businesses. You can go to coreyquinn.com/newsletter, and I'd love to see you on the list. So those are 2 places.
Awesome, man. Well, Corey, it's been such a pleasure talking with you, man. I appreciate the conversation, the wisdom, and just you being you. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Nick, thank you so much for the opportunity. I had a great time, man.
Another great conversation on today's episode of the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. So, what did you think of the show today? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and check out the Instagram or Facebook page to join the conversation. If you enjoyed the episode, please jump over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. It helps us be found and helps others be healed. If this episode opened your eyes, made you think, or smile at all, then I'm sure it'll do the same for your friends. And check out the show notes for more info from today's episode, and check out other episodes on themindsetandselfmasteryshow.com, as well as our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and look up The Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. And thanks again to our incredible guests for being real, honest, and vulnerable with us today. But I'd like to thank our sponsors. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us today. Your support means the world to us. And with that, remember, your mindset matters, and so do you.